What is up, Starlings? Welcome back to a brand new breakdown and review of Stargirl Episode 8, titled Shiv Part 2. Now, obviously, this is a direct Part 2 to the Part 1 that was Shiv Part 1 last week, and it's kind of crazy even saying 8 episodes in now, because, you know, we've got 13 episodes of Stargirl, and before you know it, it's going to be over, and I guess it just proves, not to sound too cliche, but time does fly by when you are having fun, and that has been nothing really but my experience with Stargirl. And yet again, guys, I am very happy to say I had a really good time with this episode. A lot of things happened that I really enjoyed in this episode. I like to think of Shiv Part 2 to be one of those episodes that didn't necessarily bring a whole massive bunch in terms of moving the whole Season 1 plot forward loads, but at the same time, it's also one of those episodes that did have quite a few notable points in it, such as Henry King Jr. coming into his own very, very much so, a few other things. So I really want to get into this straight away today, guys, without going into detail too much at the beginning of this video. So if you go on to enjoy this video, I would really appreciate you guys hitting that like button. It really does help out. I know other YouTubers may ask you to do this all the time, but if you're ever going to do it, guys, do it on this video and share it with your friends. But other than that, kick back, relax, and let's talk about some Stargirl for a good 20 minutes, because, hey, my name's BobaTalks. So, yeah, number one, bullet point number one, Pat crashing the car in the intro. At first, I was like, what is this? What is going on? It felt so random. I didn't put the pieces together by myself, but then I was like, oh, of course. You know, it's to make Courtney's injuries received from Shiv last episode, where she got completely battered by Cindy, to seem a bit more realistic, considering that Barbara, you know, doesn't know anything. Mike still doesn't know anything. It's going to be interesting, and I've spoke about this quite a few times in the season so far. Who is going to find out first? Is Barbara really going to find out first? It's interesting as well how they keep toying with this idea. I think that this might have been the second or third time where Pat has put his arms on like Barbara's shoulders saying, look, I've got something to tell you, but it never quite happens. I think Barbara should stay out the loop, but I really wouldn't mind Mike being in on the loop. But other than that, we had Icicle dining with Barbara. If you guys watched my last review for episode 7, Shiv Part 1, you'll know that I brought up, I swear there's some kind of romantic vibe going on here. Maybe it's unbeknownst to Barbara, because I do feel like she is a devoted lady to her man, that is Pat. However, Icicle, even though he's doing all of this Project New America stuff in the name of his late wife, I'm still picking up this kind of, you know, I don't know, interest he has in Barbara. We're gonna have to wait and see where that goes. I don't know what it would even turn into, but I swear he has feelings for her. I swear I'm not looking into this too much, but either way, Pat definitely does want to look into Cindy this episode, clearly connected to the Injustice Society of America. However, yet again, season 1, one thing I do like about it, to just kind of interject on my own point here, is that this, instead of it just being a couple of episodes of newbie, you know, superhero, and then she all of a sudden becomes, you know, very proficient and stuff. Well, I feel like the whole of season 1, we're 8 episodes in now, and Courtney is still making the same mistakes over and over and over again, or there's just justifiable superhero trials and tribulations that go wrong. And yet again, in this episode, that happens a whole bunch more, and it's very interesting, especially after what happened at the end of last episode, but stick around towards the end of this video for me to get to that point. But aside from that, in this moment, Courtney wanted to tell that Barbara about it after they beat the Injustice Society of America, because she doesn't want it taken away from her being, obviously, Stargirl in the time being. But moving along in the plotline of this episode, Shiv reports to her father, Dragon King, that she's found Stargirl. Now, one thing I really enjoyed about this, and call me dumb or whatever, but I really didn't see it coming, is that I even wrote down in my bullet points here, oh, she didn't tell Dragon King that not only did I fight Stargirl, but Stargirl was Courtney, because if you remember back to last week's review, I said she definitely would have heard Pat say Courtney when he came running in saying, Courtney, are you okay? You know, it was very obvious, but I was buying it for now, that she just fought Stargirl, she went back to Dragon King, she told him about it, but she didn't know who she was, just out of comic book logic. Yeah, a lot of people saying, how can you not tell that Courtney is Stargirl with the same curly hair? Isn't it so obvious? But, you know, when I see comments like that, I just refer back to typical old comic book logic of Clark Kent, Superman, and things like that. You sometimes just have to suspend your disbelief. Very much so in those situations. But yeah, for now, I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll let that slide, even though it was kind of obvious. I bought it. But it turns out later she did know it the whole time. And I was like, oh, okay, I feel kind of dumb now. But yeah, that was a nice little twist here. There were also some other interesting comments in this scene between between Cindy and Dragon King, where he said, they may never give you a seat at the table now. And he pointed out because, to be fair, she was in the tunnels, Cynthia, and she is alive. So, like, I get what his point there. It may even be viewed as insanely embarrassing because I mentioned this in my review as well, with it is practically almost suicide going in those tunnels, which are linked to Dragon King's lair, the Injustice Society of America's headquarters. If you would have told me that Stargirl was going in the Dragon's Den, so to speak, and came out the other end, well, I was about to say completely unscathed, but we know how it ended up for her, but surviving, it's very, very hard to believe. So I think the fact that Cindy, aka Shiv, managed to let Stargirl live, and she was literally in the Dragon's Den, so to speak, again, that must be very embarrassing. Did anyone else find that moment where he said, "Do not make me remove my hood"? I found it kind of funny, because I don't know if you've all seen the same trailer as me. I'm not flaking at all on DC Universe's production here, because you guys know I love it. I really do, and I think that this design, it looks good, but I don't find it intimidating, and that is Dragon King's lizard-esque dragon face. Some of you may not have seen it, but this was in one of the trailers. This is what Dragon King looks like, and I don't know. I wouldn't really get creeped out by that. Maybe I would if it was in real life, I suppose, but looking at it in terms of looking at a story, this isn't terrifying to me. But maybe some of you do find it terrifying. I mean, I guess Cindy does. But moving onwards and upwards, our man, very impulsively to Rick's character, which isn't a change at all, wants to break down Cindy's door and just take her out. Beth is mediating this all, being Beth, the sensible one. Yolanda's kind of like in between, but Beth essentially had a plan, and that is to go to Cindy's house, but we'll talk about that a bit more a little bit later. But then we also had Courtney, who saw Brainwave Jr. sat in the hospital with his dad. Now, I found this moment quite significant personally, because I was maybe looking into it a bit too much than what I should. I don't know if this is necessarily a flaw, but when Courtney was looking at Henry, and his powers are really coming into fruition right now, I really thought that this moment would spell potentially a very sly scene where maybe the audience aren't fully meant to know, but perhaps would find out later that Henry King read her mind, and she was obviously thinking, oh my god, your Brainwave son, oh my god, this, that, and the other. Maybe Courtney really just wasn't thinking anything that would compromise her in that moment, but a part of me couldn't help but think that when Henry was literally looking at Courtney, he would have been reading her mind, and I just thought that she would have been thinking something to do with Injustice Society, Stargirl stuff, or who his father is, but nothing came from it. Now, I feel like this next scene I want to talk about really just does strengthen the mystery even more, because I've seen quite a few people debate about it in the comments, and it really is, open to interpretation still at this point, because we don't definitively know the nature and iteration, of this iteration of the cosmic staff. So, of course, I want to talk about Pat talking to the staff. Doesn't feel like it's respected them in the past, calls the staff impulsive and reckless, which, definitely does support the characteristics we've seen from it this season so far with Courtney. But he talks about when the staff came into Starman's life, he was already an adult, running around already as the Star-Spangled Kid for years. He knew what to expect, but Courtney obviously is a 15-year-old girl, hasn't had any prior experience, and the staff just going along and even basically encouraging Courtney only really kind of puts her life a little bit more in danger. So Pat was more or less asking the staff to take her away from danger and not towards it if it does get too much. If it obviously gets too much, like it did. A perfect example would be how Courtney was getting battered last episode. The staff should have probably grabbed her if it could have and flown away. And the staff doesn't bother to respond until he is gone. But the point at hand I wanted to bring up, as I did at the beginning before breaking this down, is just that the staff does definitely seem to have some kind of sentient personality. I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's still up for debate. But moments like this really do highlight that it has its own personality. And I know some people are thinking, oh, maybe the soul of the original Starman is trapped within the staff, and maybe the original Starman is Courtney's father rather than Sylvester himself, the Starman who most recently died. Whatever you're thinking, there's more to this staff than meets the eye. And we have to talk about that Icicle visiting Mr. Riley moment. I love this moment. Now, this was all about, I believe Mr. Riley kind of worked for one of the companies, or if not the company, that was responsible for, his wife's death, through one form or another, because his wife got an illness, perhaps cancer, I think it was, through, companies out there who poison water supplies. People get sick in the communities that this company's buildings and operations are a part of, and, fall ill and die as a result. So this whole scene was really just to reiterate Icicle's motivations. I don't think this was a part of any larger plot other than him just, really wanting to completely do justice for the injustice that was done to his family. And that was like that's obviously not the very line, but that's one of the lines I love from the flashback to Icicle losing his wife. I think it was something like, I'm going to fight injustice with justice, or justice with, I don't know. But either way, that animation and transformation from Jordan into Icicle was awesome. We've seen Icicle obviously before, that's no surprise, but we've never seen his face as Jordan kind of like crack into this, really brittle Icicle look. And wow, I loved it. It was really cool. Massive RIP to Mr. Riley, who shattered into pieces on the floor. We even had a little blowout of cold air from Icicle as if he was blowing out, smoke from the barrel of a gun. It was just great. Love moments like this. And we've still got so many more cool moments to come from Icicle. But moving onwards and backwards almost to Henry, because he was searching around his father's office for some pills to kind of dull his seeping in brainwave powers. And that is when, stuff really starts to get crazy. Along the search, he finds a key, and he manages to telekinetically move one of the pills that he was going to take. And at this point, it's like Henry King Jr. was like 75% of the way into transformation into Brainwave Jr. But on the other side of things, because this is where the episode starts to split into like multiple things going on at once, we had Beth's plan, as I said, was to go to Cindy's house. She turns the goggles on. I love the comment that Chuck made about Pat, by the way. But either way, after, looking and scanning at a few things, such as Cindy's mother or stepmother, and it couldn't find an identity or origin for her, she does find a security pad, enters the code, and proceeds to go down into Dragon King's lair. Now, while this was happening, we had Cindy going to check in on Courtney, and as I said, I was completely fooled in this moment. I was definitely on my toes at the beginning, but then my guard came down when it really did seem like they were kind of opening up the kind of old version of Cindy that is a bit more vulnerable. I really thought they were going along that route, because we've heard how Cindy used to be this really nice girl, and when her mother died, she became this cruel, evil kind of exterior from there on out. But I was wrong. I was completely wrong. So after all of this, she was like, oh, I do know that you're Stargirl, and she doesn't even want to share that secret with her dad, because so she doesn't get sidelined. I think she wants that opportunity herself to expose Stargirl rather than her dad mention it to the ISA, because if that would happen, then maybe she wouldn't get this seat for herself. But while this was happening, Beth ran away from hearing those Dragon King dragon noises and went into Cindy's room and finds the picture of Dr. Shiro Ito, born 1901, member of the Japanese military in the 30s and the 40s, creator of conventional and biological weapons, and he was tried for war crimes and apparently executed in 1947. But I don't know about you guys, but that's definitely not correct, because low key, that is Dragon King, who is still around today. So the big takeaway from this is that now, the new JSA have something to go off. They've got quite a few things, if you think about it. They've already got Brainwave in the coma. They already know who obviously Dragon King is now, and that could hopefully get them a little bit more involved on what this satellite plan is, and Project New America. They know about the gambler, the fiddler, Sportsmaster, even though they don't know Sportsmaster's identity. But either way, like it's another piece to the puzzle that they can help decipher. But back to Henry King, ladies and gentlemen. This is where he uses his new powers to have that kind of Origin-esque moment where he used the key to open the doors to Brainwave's suit stand. I guess you call it a suit stand. I don't know. I swear they're all VHS tapes on the side of on the wall there. I could be wrong with the day marked on them. I'm very intrigued as to what is on those tapes. By the way, this is when Henry finds that letter from Dragon King to Henry King, Henry King's father, which is, I'm just making this ultra complicated. But either way, it was about, my daughter Cindy will watch your son, obviously to inform Henry's dad if his son is getting powers or not, which is something where from the very first episode, Henry King's father was very adamant about finding out. Do you remember that scene where he was just staring into his eyes saying, what am I thinking? He's been waiting for his son, his son who was literally named after him, to get the powers so he can carry on the legacy. Except I have a real good feeling that this won't go the way Brainwave thinks, and I'll get more onto that theory towards the end with that Brainwave explosion scene, if you will, Brainwave Jr., if you will. But yeah, this was quite important because Henry, on top of everything that's already happening in this episode, realizes that his dad's appointed Cindy to spy on him. Like this is getting nuts for Henry. This was actually a huge episode for Henry because there's so many revelations going on. Now, guys, we're right at the end of the episode now, and this is where some major stuff goes down, and definitely a few things that I want to discuss in particular, and that is when Courtney tries to help out herself after hearing the text from Yolanda, and obviously the staff initially refuses after the pep talk it had with Pat earlier, but then carries, on going with her, which is kind of strange. And the whole thing about this anyway, before we just get into the whole point of when Stargirl just launched through the window, attacked Cindy out of nowhere, full on aggressive mode, trying to take her out, like full on. Is that, did Courtney learn nothing from last episode? Look, I know in her mind at this point, the other JSA members were potentially in danger. So what other choice would you really have? But I just find it an interesting choice in this episode that they decided to do that after the whole learning lesson of last week's episode was that if you go out by yourself, you get decimated by Shiv, for example. This episode, even with the circumstances that I just pointed out, she still decided to go out and put just as much risk, even more risk, since she's injured. Her hands are injured. They got literally impaled with shivs, if you will. So yeah, I just found that interesting. I don't think it was a detriment to the story because I can believe that if you really feel like you had nothing left to lose and your friends are already in danger and Pat's in danger potentially, then you would go out and try and save them. But another thing that kind of just undoes this for me, only a little bit, and by the way, I really still enjoyed these scenes. Don't get me wrong. I just can't help but think, a little bit more critically than maybe some other people, is that you would have thought, like, because this was filmed at nighttime, a little bit after when, Pat said to the others, like Beth, Rick, and Yolanda, who were outside in the daytime, come on, you can't be out here in that. Let's go, get in the car and go, kind of thing. You would have thought one of them would have texted Stargirl that, hey, we're okay. We're okay now, by the way. We all got out of Cindy's house. That was like, you have to assume a few hours at the very least because of daylight faded when Stargirl decided to kick down her window and fly in. And as I said, I'm not hating on this at all. I'm just pointing out that surely somebody would have pointed out that everyone's okay, so Stargirl, Courtney wouldn't have had to have then gone after Shiv. I don't know, just a little bit of a flaw I feel in the writing there, but not a huge deal, but just a bit nonsensical. But hey, on the other side of things, looking at this fight for what it was on an entertainment value, once again, freaking amazing. For a fight in the bedroom that then went outside, it was good. Like, man, I love... God, guys, you know what? Just don't forget that this came from DC Universe, not the CW. I just love what these guys do. Like, it's so much better. It really is. I'm sorry, I had to go there. It just is. The effects, the action, the choreography for what little we had, despite it, being right at the very end, it's just phenomenal. By the way, Henry King was very conveniently driving through the neighborhood and saw this fight unfold, but what I loved about this is that it brings up my former points, which I'll get into in just a second. Loved the comment from Cindy, by the way, saying, I'm going to kill that star-spangled bitch. That was definitely an iconic line of this series, I feel. And Cindy and Court continue to fight. Now, this is when Henry reads Stargirl's and Cindy's minds, whilst they're kind of in this, like, stalemate struggle with the staff and her Shiv blades. And Henry hears Stargirl saying that she wants to kill all my friends, Cindy saying that she hates her in her mind, and this will get me into the ISA, can finally sit at the table. But Cindy also says out loud to Henry, we're the same, just like our parents. However, what if, no, you're not the same as your parents, or at least you don't have to be. And that's what I wanted to get back to earlier, and I've been speculating across my whole season reviews, if you guys have been watching my reviews for the longest time since this began, that Henry, just because he's Brainwave Jr. in the comics, this, that, and the other, it doesn't mean that he has to turn out this way. And I feel like this line from Cindy that she shouted at Henry was quite symbolic of where they might go. They might not go that way. If they don't, I think it could be a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I have a good feeling that they may go that way. And that is when, she does say, as I've already said, we're the same, just like our parents. And it's just like, well, you don't have to be. You don't always have to be a reflection of your parents' mistakes or this, that, and the other. It's a very accurate thing to many people today. Lots of people grow up with certain beliefs, certain discriminations, this, that, and the other, because their parents were that way. And it's the same thing with the ISA here. Oh, if you're the wizard, if you're Icicle, if you're Brainwave, then you're got to automatically be Brainwave Jr. You're automatically got to be Icicle Jr. if you turn out to be these people's sons or daughters, but you don't have to be. So I feel like Henry's struggle and conflict, granted that a lot of his struggle in his face was because of how painful these powers are that are kicking in his brain, but I feel like that within itself is also just symbolic of his struggle as to, do I side with the ISA or do I just do what I feel is right? And I really hope that he does. I think it may very well go there, but either way, he releases a massive brainwave grenade, I have dubbed it, that sends Cindy and Stargirl absolutely flying. Cindy gets taken down to Dragon King's lair through the sewer by his lackeys. I guess Dragon King was just like, I don't want my daughter embarrassing me and my brand and name anymore. And this is where Henry looks upon Stargirl, and he reads her mind. She says, he's a telepath like his dad, Brainwave, so now he's going to look even more into that if it wasn't already obvious by finding the suit on the stand. And Henry, being really troubled in his mind, but very clearly undefined in this moment, it's just an interesting beat to leave off as to where he could end up. And as for the rest of everything else, the episode ended with Dragon King being all excited that he, or should I say Henry, has got his father's powers. Now, this is because, this will be useful for his satellite machine that he's developing. If you guys remember, they wanted Brainwave's powers to wake Brainwave up from a coma, but you can kind of see where this is going. My theory is that Henry may not be evil indeed like his father, but regardless of if he's going to go with the ISA or just do what is right, and, I'm not saying he's going to be a part of the new JSA, but let's just say, regardless of what allegiance he chooses, I think he will be used against his will to help launch the Project New America and the machine that Dragon King is launching. Who knows? If he doesn't agree to it, then that's only going to solidify his stance in being against the ISA. If he's going to be forced to use his powers to help them out. So I'm really looking forward to see where Jake Austin Walker's Henry King Jr. lands up. I hope he doesn't go with the ISA. It'd be definitely interesting to have one of the kids not turn out like Cindy, because Cindy obviously is following in suit and in line with the legacy of the ISA like her father, and just going along the path of the villain. But Henry may very well indeed choose something different, and that would be an interesting storyline to see follow throughout this season and the next season. So that was the episode, guys. Solid episode. I felt like it left off on a very interesting moment. Stuff is very much so moving along in the plot. It's only getting more exciting. I felt like this was a nice closing part 2 to the part 1 of the Shiv story, if you will. But as always, guys, I would love to know what you thought down in the comments below. Do not forget that I do have a Discord server. The reason why I'm plugging that so much is because I do share exclusive images of Stargirl, DC Universe shows like Doom Patrol, promo images. I am usually one of the first to post it online as soon as I hear from Warner Brothers about them being released. And other things like that, you can talk to me personally in my Discord server, and I would love to see more of you there. We have quite a few Stargirl fans and everything like that. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this episode. Like the video if you did enjoy it. Make sure you're subscribed with post notifications turned on so you never miss out on a future video of mine. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you starlings in the next video. Goodbye.